Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and I am so sick of the Jimmy Butler situation. It has become an absolute circus. I need this thing to end as soon as possible because at the moment, we're leading up to the trade deadline. There's some amazing basketball going on. In the meantime, it is a great year of hoops, and yet the constant news cycle surrounding the Jimmy Butler saga is exhausting. I was in Paris over the last 4 or 5 days. There was a 6-hour time difference. I was trying to watch Thunder versus Blazers at 2 a.m. their time, so I was keeping up with the NBA as much as I could, but I was somewhat out of the loop, and yet I still felt like I was being absolutely bombarded by Jimmy Butler reports, by suspensions, by rumors, by tweets, non-stop. I need this thing to go ahead and be over, and the latest stuff coming out just makes it somehow even more dramatic than it's been so far, because as of yesterday, we got word that Jimmy has been indefinitely suspended by the Miami Heat, and the reason it is because he was at practice, he was at shoot-around, and they came in and basically told him, hey, you're going to be coming off the bench for Haywood Highsmith, and unsurprisingly, Jimmy Butler didn't like that, so he stormed out of practice, and now he's indefinitely suspended. Very clearly, the Heat were trying to get him to have that reaction. They were trying to get him to storm out, to make himself suspended, so they could get this trade deal done. Jimmy's taken a million shots at Pat Riley throughout this. Now he's posting on Instagram, basically saying that he's unemployed. You've got Kevin Love instigating on Instagram. He's been doing that nonstop. It's been a complete and utter disaster. I don't know why Jimmy ever played after the initial trade request when he told the Heat, hey, I went out of here, want this thing to be over, and it became clear to everybody that the relationship was fractured. He should have just sat out from that moment till whenever he was dealt. But instead, he was suspended and then brought back and then suspended again, and now he's suspended one more time. Predictably, this led to, of course, a lot of drama. I mean, we're talking about the guy who literally went with the third stringers into a practice when he was with the Timberwolves and beat the starters and was yelling at everybody demanding trades. It was clear this was going to be a messy breakup from the beginning, but it's just gone on too long, and thankfully, the trade deadline is here to save us. I would be shocked if he's not dealt with the way this relationship has completely fallen apart. It's descended from the point where a couple of years ago, I would have told you Jimmy was going to retire as a member of the Miami Heat. His jersey was going to be immediately retired the second that he hung up the shoes. Now, I do still think he gets retired at some point, but it might take a lot longer because of everything that's transpired over these past few weeks. However, despite the fact that the trade deadline is going to rescue us from this dialogue, I have no idea how it's going to do that because clearly Jimmy wants to go to the Phoenix Suns. I mean, he's not said that. A lot of the reports are that he's willing to go anywhere except apparently Memphis for some reason. We'll talk about them later, but he literally wore Phoenix Suns colorway shoes to a game the other day, and every report has been that that's the spot where he wants to go, that the Suns really want Jimmy Butler. But there is one big roadblock to that whole situation, and it is Bradley Beal. And we've talked a lot here on the channel about the Bradley Beal situation, the contract, the fact that I don't believe this is going to happen. I said this in a video that I recorded, but I never posted for when I was out of the country. But basically, if Jimmy Butler ends up a Phoenix Sun, I will give away a Jimmy Butler Suns jersey because I don't think it's going to happen. I just see no way that the Bradley Beal hurdle is clear to make this deal work because, of course, he's got no trade clause while simultaneously having one of the worst contracts in the entire league. He's making $50 million plus over the next few years for a guy who's like not even an all-star level player. He's like good. I think he's fine. He's a star, but he's not going to give you that much production. He's not worth that type of money, especially with today's CBA. It's just a non-starter for basically anybody. And him having the only no trade clause outside of LeBron James in the league makes things infinitely more disastrous. Because in normal bad contract circumstances, it's like, okay, throw in a few first-round picks. And they made a trade with the Jazz, giving up one of their firsts for 3 future firsts, which, by the way, for the Jazz, amazing deal because that 2031 pick from the Suns could be ridiculously good because they literally control not a single one of their draft picks until 2032 at this point. So if this thing comes crumbling down, which it feels like it's going to, that could be an amazing pick. But they grabbed a few first round picks, and in normal circumstances, you attach those 3 to Bradley Beal and send him to like maybe back to the Wizards or like the Hornets or the Raptors or just one of these bad teams at the moment, and you get off that contract scot-free, and then you make a trade, you know, it becomes a 3-team with Jimmy going to you and other salary filler going to Miami, and boom, it's done. And and maybe that still ends up happening. But Beal, I don't think is going to waive his no trade clause to play for basically anybody. It sounds like maybe Milwaukee could end up working out where it's Beal going there for Chris Middleton, and I do think that the Bucks should probably move off of Chris Middleton with the ankle injuries and it's just inconsistency in play, his inconsistency in being on the court whatsoever at this point for a team that desperately needs to win now. So I think that makes sense, although I don't think Bradley Beal is the savior, and if that trade happens, I'll talk about that in depth, but like, I guess it makes sense, and then you send Chris Middleton either to the Heat or to another team, and then some assets go to Miami, and of course, Jimmy Butler lands with the Suns. I do think there's a framework there for Beal to waive his no trade clause, and everybody theoretically comes out of that feeling at least a little bit good about the deal that they made. But at the same time, there's reports that Beal doesn't want to go somewhere with a cold winter, which obviously Milwaukee has that. And his agent has said before that Beal's kind of just focused on helping the Suns win. But if he's getting benched and clearly they're trying to shove him out the door, maybe he's willing to yield a little bit. But then what if the Bucks come to their senses and say, wait a second, are we really going to trade for like the worst contract in the NBA? I just feel like there are way too many roadblocks for this deal getting done. So I don't think Jimmy Butler ends up with Phoenix Sun. The question is, where does he actually go? And luckily enough for us, you know, those of us that are desperate for this thing to go ahead and end, for there to be a resolution so the rest of the trade market can open up, it sounds like the reported price for Jimmy Butler has dropped. People are saying that apparently the Heat are willing to take lesser offers because it's getting close to the deadline, and of course, this thing is so fractured. Kevin O'Connor is saying that he's heard that the Warriors could be back interested, and I do think that makes sense. I believe it was my predictions video for 2025 where I said that I thought ultimately Jimmy was going to land with Golden State because I didn't believe that a Phoenix deal could get done, and they just made a lot of sense as a suitor. You need a supporting piece next to Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and sure, Jimmy Butler's getting old, and you know, a lot of teams don't want to pay him, but if you're the Warriors who are kind of trying to win now, or at least in my opinion, they should be trying to at the moment, they're actively doing everything they can to not do that. I think it makes more sense for them to pay Jimmy Butler than a number of other teams, so I wouldn't be surprised if that deal happens. Memphis to me still makes a lot of sense, even though Jimmy, again, continues to say that he's willing to go anywhere but the Grizzlies. I don't understand that. I think they would be really scary with Jimmy there. That's a legitimate chance for him to try and win a ring at this point. Like Ja, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, Zach Edey, Jimmy Butler's a starting five. Plus, the Grizzlies have so many depth pieces that they can make a deal work to bring in Jimmy, including like Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard probably. Maybe it's like a Brandon Clark. And you've still got like Scottie Pippen Jr. and Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson and Jay Huff, Asante Aldama, all these different guys off the bench. You could still make an insane 10-man rotation with one of the best starting lineups talent-wise in the league. Like, why, if you're Jimmy, do you not want to be part of that? Sure, that might end up being a rental because the Grizzlies are paying their top guys so much money, but at least for a season, if I'm Jimmy, I'm open to that possibility, and you could always opt into your, contract after the year as well. I feel like maybe the Hawks could get involved in this. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with teams at this point, but they theoretically could be interested. I guess they've been performing. The Nuggets, I don't know if they're going to make a move because they've been playing really well as of late, although the last couple games have been rougher. Like the Pacers, could they go after Jimmy Butler now that they figured out their stride? I really don't know. Ultimately, I think I've reached the point where I'm just expecting some insane, like out of left field team to make the decision like, hey, let's just pull the trigger on a Jimmy Butler trade. Who knows what happens? Maybe some of the Cavs get insane. I don't think they have the ability to make that money work, but just as an example, like somebody you might never expect is going to make this Jimmy Butler trade. Maybe it's like the Pistons. I don't know. I really don't know who it is, but I want this thing to go ahead and be over. And the worst part about this, in my opinion, is that it's clouding a lot of really good stuff going on in Miami right now in the midst of all the chaos. Like, I still don't think Tyler Herro is getting enough love for the insane season he's been having. Career high efficiency across the board, a career high 24.1 points per game. He's become the team's best player. He had 30 points and 12 dimes last night in a double OT win over the Magic. He should be in All-Star talks. He should be in MIP talks. And yet, because of the Jimmy Butler rumors, that's kind of getting drowned out. Bam Adebayo has had a pretty rough season, but recently is starting to look more and more like himself. It's great. I really love to see that. But also, Kel'el Ware has been playing out of his absolute mind this season, especially since he's gotten more minutes. Since January 1st, giving the Heat 13.5 points per game, shooting almost 60% from the field, almost 47% from threes, blocking 1.5 shots per game. And over his last few, it's 19 and 10 on nearly perfect shooting in that win over the Magic. It's 22 and 10 with 2 blocks against the Bucks. It's 20 and 15 with 2 blocks against the Blazers. 25 and 8 with 2 blocks against the Spurs. He has been one of the best young big men in the entire sport since he's been given more opportunity. And it really feels like after this Jimmy saga is wrapped up and he continues to get more and more minutes, he could end up being the Rookie of the Year, and that is something that should be getting a lot more love, that should be discussed, rather than the 18th suspension that Pat Riley and the Heat have given to Jimmy Butler. And again, I'm so excited that the deadline is almost here, so this can wrap up, and we could talk a lot more about how fun the Miami Heat are right now. They're the 6th seed, and I'm having way more enjoyment watching this team hoop than I did at the beginning of the year, because I've continuously said at some point they need to make some type of move, whether it's getting Jimmy Butler help or it's resetting, because this current core, even though they found a way to overperform in a lot of playoffs, make it to a couple of finals, they were never going to win a championship. They were just not a contender. They continue to do nothing in the offseason, strike out on top free agents. It's been too long without some type of major change, and now the major change is here, and I'm excited about it. Feels like there is a legitimate possibility for direction post-deadline with the Miami Heat, something I haven't felt like they've really had over the past few years. You've got Herro, you've got Bam, you've got Kel'el Ware. Specifically, that Bam-Kel'el Ware duo in the front court is so exciting. You've still got like Nikola Jovic, you've got Jaime Jaquez. You're going to bring in some type of young player potentially, or draft picks when you trade Jimmy Butler. They're still being coached by Eric Spoelstra, one of the best in the business. I would love to see this Heat team in a playoff series. I think it would be really fun. They're not going to knock off a top seed, but knowing the way that the Heat perform, they could at least give them a tough outing, and I think it's an exciting way to transition into a new era in Miami. Whether it's Jimmy going to Golden State, or somehow Memphis, or one of those other random teams, I don't know what it is. I don't really care at this point. I would much rather talk about the amazing success that the Heat are having, that young core that they're developing, rather than this Jimmy Butler situation. So this is hopefully going to be my last video on it. It should be until the trade happens. Again, I think it comes within the next week or so leading into the deadline. Once that happens, I expect the floodgates to open and other guys get dealt. Maybe we see a lot of action around the deadline, and it's like Levine and Vucevic and Cam Johnson and this guy and that guy. Maybe it's just the Jimmy trade and then a couple of small things. I don't really know. I'm not really sure what we're going to get here when February 6th rolls around, but I'm excited about it, and mostly excited for the Jimmy Butler saga to just be over. Let's not do this anymore. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Heat and Jimmy Butler right now, where he ends up going. Let me know down below in the comments where you think he ends up landing. What is your top spot? Is there some other team that I didn't mention in this video? Do you think he ends up as a Phoenix Sun? Am I wrong that he will no way get over there to Arizona? Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say back.